Today we're going to talk about culture, and specifically a DevOps culture. One of the very common models of DevOps is called CALMS, C-A-L-M-S, Culture, Automation, Lean, Measurement, Sharing. But when we talk about culture, what do we really mean? The sociologist Edgar Schein said that culture is the pattern of shared assumptions to be taught to new starters and people that come and join your organization. And it's very often sort of pictured as an iceberg. So if you think about an iceberg and there's a water level, we know that 1/3 of the iceberg is above the water and 2/3 of the iceberg is below the water. The bit above the water is the strategy and tactics of your organization. But the 2/3, the important 2/3 below the water, is the culture. And when we're trying to move more towards having a DevOps culture, it requires you to really address some deeply held fundamental beliefs inside the organization. And the same psychologist Edgar Schein has a model for that as well, which he draws as a pyramid, which actually maps on very well to our culture diagram. And it has 3 levels. And the top level here is artifacts. These are the things that you see around you. A lot of people talk about the way an office looks. Is it open plan? Does it have lots of cubicles? Does it have bean bags? They're very visible things that you see. But it's also the way you work. Is it agile or waterfall? Are you formed in functional teams or cross-functional teams? But these are the things which are visible and obvious to everybody. And below that we have what's called the espoused values. So these are the types of things that you would see typically on the About Us company page, where we talk about, these are our company values, and our staff are our most important thing, or we want to be customer focused. And often they aren't really the living and breathing values of the organization. And that's where we get down to the bottom level. And this is the underlying assumptions. And this is the bedrock of the culture. And these are the values, beliefs, and attitudes which sort of almost go without saying inside the organization. The example I normally use when I'm talking to customers is what happens if it's your birthday? Do you completely ignore it? Do you bring a cake into work? Does somebody bring a cake into work for you? Do you all go out for lunch, or do you do what we do at DevOpsGroup and you actually get the day off so you can spend the day with your family? Each of these represents a different type of culture, or one aspect of a different type of culture. One also thing we often talk about is how are high performers treated inside an organization? Is if you achieve your goals or you hit a sales target, is it okay to not be a particularly nice person? Is it okay to lie to a customer? These are different types of cultures, but a lot of them are underlying assumptions which are not questioned by people on a daily basis. So when we're looking at trying to help organizations move towards a DevOps and more entrepreneurial culture, we can use this framework, because if we want the change to last, we know that changing the artifacts, changing the surface stuff is only short-lived. You can change an office and create a funky new office, but if you're not really changing more about how people work, their values and their underlying assumptions, then you're not really going to change. But if we want it to last, we've got to be focusing here on the culture level. But along with this, it's pretty easy to move people to a new office, but it's pretty hard to change what might be decades of belief in how an organization works. And when we're talking about moving towards a DevOps culture, we are trying to challenge some pretty fundamental beliefs. So for example, when we think about what a DevOps culture is, we are talking about a culture that embraces experimentation and change. So we're open to change. We like the idea of change. In fact, we like delaying decisions until the last responsible moment to give us the maximum opportunity to change and adjust. We're going to run experiments. If we're going to run experiments, our culture has to be grounded in data and metrics, the M in the CALMS model that I talked about earlier. So if your culture is grounded in metrics and data and dashboards, you've got to collect all that data, but then you've actually got to make decisions based upon that data rather than just based upon somebody's opinions. So there's lots of things that we can do to try and tackle this. We can look at what behavior is rewarded. So if we think about your incentives inside the organization, we would really want to make sure that we're incentivizing the right behavior and the right values right down here at this bottom level. Am I rewarded for hoarding my information, and because I think that gives me control, or am I rewarded for sharing my information and participating in show and tells and internal communities of practice? So that's a brief introduction to culture and what a DevOps culture is.